Hello everyone and welcome back to the Champions Showdown. We're continuing with the game Alireza Firouzja versus Levon Aronian from round 4 of day 2, and it's quite a crazy game, not a long one, just right for a very enjoyable Sunday. So without further ado, let's check it out as well. It's a very nice game. So it's not the exact same setup as we've shown in the previous game, Magnus Carlsen versus Wesley. So the bishop pair is fully operational already, but the knights are a bit different than in that game. Which is normal as this is round 4. But the opening will be quite similar. So c4, sorry about that. Of course, both players want to open up their bishop pair. We have c5, b3, b6. So both players now open up their bishop pair. We can now make these arrows. Even though it's funny, ever since chess.com updated their interface, you can like make the arrows go anywhere. Like you can make this bishop go here, and you can make this bishop go here. So it's really weird. Makes no sense, but it is a lot of fun. Like you can do like whatever you want. This bishop can go here, 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 here. Like it's super fun without actually making any sense. But not everything has to make sense if it's fun. So just wanted to mention that if I ever make a wrong arrow and you guys like what are you doing with the arrows, that's why it's happening. So e4 and now e5, just a nice symmetrical follow-up. We have knight to e2 and here knight to e7. Levon just copies the moves. We have castles by Firouzja, and here Levon breaks symmetry with knight to g6. We have knight to c3 now, going for that the d5 square. He has a very nice control of the square, and as Levon played both c5 and e5, he will not be able to kick the knight away with any of the pawns. But also Alireza made a nice hole here on d4, and Levon will of course use this for his outpost. So knight to c7. Preparing knight e6 and also knight to d4, as Josh Waitzkin would say, exploiting the space left behind. So knight d5 and now knight to e6, of course preparing to bring this knight to the d4 outpost, and g3. Controlling this knight on g6 and also making preparations to strike in the center with f4. We have knight to d4, just nicely placing that knight, and knight to g2. The knight will also help out with the pushing of the f-pawn. Here Levon castles. Now both players have nicely castled, and we have this very nice position where both players castle kingside, and both players have a very fully operational bishop pair. So this is something that quite often happens in chess 960, not so often in normal chess, that you will have such nice bishop pairs every game. Queen to h5, a very nice attacking idea by Alireza, just bringing that queen into the game, and Levon does have some plans of shifting this rook over, rook to c6 to h6, and the queen will be very useful there, as you'll see later on. So rook to c6, now if the knight moves, you can bring the rook to help out with the defense, and f4. Striking in the center, as we mentioned. E captures on f4, and now Levon wants Alireza to capture with the knight, so he can recapture with his knight and then bring the rook here. But of course Alireza doesn't do that, he just goes g captures on f4, messing up his king's pawn structure a little bit, but it's all good. If anything, it can even be useful. You can maybe play king h1, bring the rook over here. You can bring this rook to c3, maybe to h3 to help out with the attack. A lot of attacking possibilities. So here knight e7, making sure this rook to h6 move comes very, very soon, as you will need it. And here Alireza decides to give up one of his bishops, as long as this knight is here, you don't have any pawns to kick it away. It's gonna stay there for as long as you allow it. So here bishop captures on d4. We have c captures, and now queen to h4, putting pressure on this knight, as there is now a double attack, so you don't have to worry about rook to h6 all that much, and basically just offering a queen trade. If Levon wants, he can just capture, we can have a queen trade, and then you can recapture here and have a nice game. However, we have rook to e8. Levon says nope, queens stay on the board for the moment. And Alireza continues with e5. Now there is the threat of just queen captures on h7, so of course you have to prevent this. We have rook to h6, and now comes the move from the thumbnail, knight to f6 check. And of course it's a very easy to make a mistake here, not by capturing, of course. If you capture, then you just lose the rook, but you could go king to f8, and then you run into the very unpleasant queen to g5, and now the rook is lost. You don't have a good move. You still cannot capture because of queen captures, and of course you cannot go rook to g6 because the bishop covers that square. So Levon goes for the only move possible, king to h8, leaving some squares for this rook. White still unable to capture because the queen is hanging. So queen to g5 now by Alireza, and now rook to f8, getting the rook out of harm's way. And now knight to g4, attacking Levon's rook here. Rook to h3, the only good square for the rook, and now comes knight to f2. And now his rook is once again under attack, but there is one move that allows Levon to play for advantage. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find this advantageous idea while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the move we almost never want to play. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's f6. And f6 does a lot for this position. For one, it gets rid of the queen from such a nice active square, but also it prepares the opening of the f-file, but also it prepares to bring this bishop, well, it will bring this bishop come alive, as once you open this, then you really have this bishop, you have this bishop, the rook is already nicely placed here, and it's just going to be a really open position. And even capturing doesn't do all that much for you. Once you move the queen, the rook's going to move. Now this rook is coming here, and it's just it's game over for white. So Alireza doesn't capture on f6. Instead, Alireza goes queen g4 right away, but now rook back to h6. And now the same rules apply. You're still going to capture here, and not much is going to change. You do not want to capture here and open up the g file. So knight to h1 by Alireza, and now just f captures on e5. With f captures, and now Levon grabs the pawn. Bishop captures on e5, and now this the position fully opened up, and you need to do something about this. So Alireza prepared for this. Knight h1 to g3 now stops any captures on h2, and knight to g8. Here Levon prepares to bring the knight now into the game. Alireza trades once, captures, and rook to f1. We have knight to f6, blocking and attacking, queen to g5, and now, as the bishop is under attack, d6. So now Alireza needs to find a move. There are some ideas that you could maybe create some threats here towards this rook. So Alireza just improves the position of the bishop to d3. And now, how do you push for advantage here? Well, Levon needs to do a few things. First, he needs to, well, do something about this pin. You cannot move the knight because just the rook captures queen checkmate. So by taking this into consideration and using the entire board to find the move, Levon finds bishop captures on g2, and it is the strongest move in the position. So king captures is forced, well, not forced, but I mean, if you don't do it, you're just down a piece, so I guess it is forced. King captures, and now queen to c8, unpinning with the threat, well, again, with the arrow, with the threat of queen to h3. So nicely unpinned. We have h4, Alireza stops this, and now a5, prevents any advancements of the pawns on the queen side from Alireza. Rook to f3, now adding more defense to the third rank, but now knight to g8. Now the knight can be remaneuvered. Also, it's a very nice defensive piece. Now the queen can move, and you don't have to worry about any rook f8 ideas. So rook to f7, just going for some activity here, putting pressure on this g7 pawn. If the bishop moves, it's going to be very tricky to defend. So bishop to f6, now attacking Alireza's queen, and the queen to d5 now. And here, there's a very interesting move that Levon didn't go for. Levon went for rook captures on h4. And of course, who could blame him? You just want to play queen to h3 and end the game. But there was the very interesting knight e7, because it wins the exchange. The queen can no longer keep an eye on the rook. And after queen captures, you're going to go queen here, attack the rook, and now you will have to give up the rook either by capturing here or here. Because if you defend by queen e6, then just bishop captures, opens up an attack, and now again, you have to give up the exchange. Rook captures, and you get this endgame where 4 pawns each, but Levon would be up the exchange in a completely winning position. So after this queen to d5 move, knight e7 very possible, but rook captures on h4 is just much more straightforward. So this is what Levon plays, with bishop to f5 preventing this idea, and now queen to e8, again putting pressure on the rook, so the queen doesn't really have all that many options. So Alireza offers a queen trade, and now it would be very dangerous. Even though Levon is up 2 pawns, it would be extremely dangerous to play this, because now there's the threat of rook here, which just wins the game. So Levon would have to block this, and now after knight f5 there's an attack here, there's an attack here, there's an attack here. So you do not want to do this. Levon plays the correct idea. Queen to b8, just gets the queen out of the way. Defends the d6 pawn, and now Alireza goes after it. Rook to d7, but this is a bit too ambitious. Bishop to e5, defends, also attacks here, defends the g7 pawn as well. And this is now a beautiful defending piece, and it's hard for Alireza to find any attacking ideas. So he goes for knight to e4. He wants to try something like knight to g5 followed by knight to f7, a nice smothered checkmate, but queen to a8. Immediately Levon pins the knight. It doesn't allow such dirty ideas. d3, Alireza defends once again, as there was also the threat of just rook captures, giving up the rook for 2 pieces. So of course Alireza defends, and now g6. And this is a beautiful move, as it frees up the f-file for the queen. And there is one super tricky idea here for Alireza that I will show because it's super interesting. Rook captures on d6, removing the defender of the bishop, so threatening queen captures, and now capturing the rook is forced. Queen captures on d6, and now you would have to really think about what to do, because if you capture the bishop, then white will win. After queen captures on d4 with check, you have to give up the knight. Now you're going to play queen captures on f6 with check, and now queen captures here. And now after f captures, queen captures, and you get this position where white is just up a piece, up a pawn. Of course, black cannot trade queens, as the king and pawn endgame will be winning for white. So it would be possible. However, after this queen captures on d6 move, black doesn't have to capture the bishop. You can just play queen b7, keep control of the g7 square, and even after you trade, it's not a problem. So the exchange sacrifice will not really be justified. Captures, and the black is just better here. He's up the exchange. So after this g6 move, well, it is interesting. It loses terribly. So bishop back to g4, but now Levon's queen goes to the f-file, and now, well, it is just a really big problem. We have rook to c7 by Alireza, now preparing rook to c8 to put a lot of pressure here on Levon's knight. But here, of course, black is completely winning. It's actually a forced checkmate in 3, which is one of the nicer checkmates I've seen. I don't think I've ever seen this particular one. And Levon also missed it, so feel free to pause the video and find it. It's mate in 3 while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this elusive checkmate pattern. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook to h2 check. I'm sure all of you saw this. King g1 and now rook to h1 check. And now there's not much you can do. If you go king to g2, then queen to f1 is checkmate. But of course, if you accept the rook sacrifice, then queen to f1 is checkmate, as the bishop covers the h2 square. It's nothing fancy, but I don't think I've ever seen this particular pattern, like rook checks, then you sacrifice on h1, and then queen f1 checkmate. But, you know, just in case you have something similar in your own games, you will be able to spot it. But okay, after rook to c7, Levon went for the second quickest idea, which is queen to f4. Basically, it's the same, but just prolongs the game a little bit. This bishop is a monster. There is no attacking moves here for Alireza. So you can just try something. Bishop to h3 to kind of guard against the rook to h2, but now comes queen to h2 check. And it was in this position on move 40 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, and an excellent victory for Levon, who not only won his game in game 4, he started the tournament with three draws on day 1, and then he got 3 wins on day 2. He defeated Alireza in round 4, then he defeated Peter Svidler, and then he defeated... No, I think first he defeated Alireza, then he defeated... Linier Dominguez, and then he defeated Peter Svidler. So 3 wins for him on the second day. And here you resign, because if king f3, then just queen to f4, rook to f4 will be checkmate. The queen now covers everything, and the pawn covers this. And if you go down the board, king to f1, it's not much better. Anything wins here. You can even just grab the piece and completely winning. Even if white goes to threat and checkmate here, you're still much faster. Just queen f4 check, you're gonna go check, you're gonna go check, and here you're gonna just go queen to c1 checkmate. Any pattern works, so would be pointless to continue. But yeah, here are the standings, just so we don't forget. After day 2, You can see Levon leading the tournament with 4.5 points. Like we said, 3 draws on the first day, then 3 wins. And for the last day, Levon, okay, let's just see. It's Carlsen on the second with 4 points, followed by Nakamura and Wesley So, all of them with 4. 3.5 Linear Dominguez, then Caruana with 3, Kasparov and Peter Svidler with 2, and with 1.5 point, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave and Alireza Firouzja. And for the last day, we'll see if Levon will be able to go all the way. He has a really, really tough last day. He faces Magnus Carlsen, Garry Kasparov, and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. So we'll see how it goes for Levon. I'm very glad to see that Levon has fully returned to the chessboard. After all, he is our most colorful grandmaster, so I'm very well that things are doing well for him over the chessboard, and as I hear in personal life as well after that terrible tragedy. So that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it and that you're enjoying the short coverage of the tournament so far. I would like to thank Adam Gripo, Tobias Hensel, Kim Fernik, Vasishta Sriramyapati, and Ivan Vlahik for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing the coverage of the Champions Showdown, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Sunday.